Hello, and I wanted to offer a very quick reflection on the quite well-known theory of morphic resonance, which I've mentioned a number of times in these videos. This is a theory that was developed by the Cambridge biologist Rupert Sheldrake, quite some years ago now. And it's the idea that all what he calls self-organizing systems take on a collective memory or can access a collective memory from previous similar systems. So here we're typically talking about species of animals, plants, which include in the animal kingdom, humans, but also pretty much anything that has life can draw upon a collective energetic field that contains a memory, a blueprint, an archetype of how to be. And this exists across time and space, according to Sheldrake. So it's quite a radical idea, and unsurprisingly, there are quite a lot of the so-called mechanicalist, I'm not sure what the word is, biologists who reject this theory as not mainstream. It's something for me that resonates very strongly with the theory of Carl Jung of the collective unconscious, that there is something that we tap into in order to know how to approach rites of passage, for example, and to act as a sort of template or to invoke certain energies that will equip us well in our life. In the theory of morphic resonance, the emphasis is very much on how an organism comes to be, how it organizes itself, how it forms. So Sheldrake suggests that it's not just down to our genes, our DNA, or what's going on in the brain that causes our bodies, for example, to develop the way they are. I personally like Sheldrake's theory, and he would be the first to admit that it is just a theory. I think he is a pantheist. Now, pantheism was very popular in biology way back when. I'm not a biologist, but I know a little bit of the history here. So the early biologists believed, this is the pantheist idea, that the divine, God, if you like, was in everything, was in nature, and allows nature to form and be as it is. Certainly, Sheldrake, I attended a lecture of his quite recently, is very well versed in comparative religion. He himself was in an ashram for a couple of years out in India under the tutelage of a very well-known, very highly regarded spiritual leader, Bede Griffiths. So quite possibly that had quite an influence on his thinking as well. And he's also incredibly knowledgeable, as I say, in terms of different philosophies and different faith traditions. So a bit of a multidisciplinarian, really, which I always like when it comes to wild and wacky theories. Where might this relate to the idea of being trans or having a trans identity? Well, I guess it's got to do with the fact that we can tap into a collective memory that might include quite a variety of templates of how to be, so to speak. Or there may be something where I really don't want to use the word that if we're born in a certain body, we get this wrong. In other words, the mapping that we get onto an energy field or an archetype or whatever is a misprogramming. But I'm not quite sure how to get around that suggestion, or using those sorts of words. In a sense, there's a bit of a confusion or a bit of a mixing that goes on in terms of the model we draw upon in terms of how to be, how to feel, how to have a sense, evolve a sense of ourselves. I don't have very strongly formed views on that. I just mention this and like this theory because I think there might be something within it that could tell us something about the nature we do adopt. So I just put that out there as something that you might want to reflect upon, not as something on which I have a strong view. It's certainly not something that can be proven, and that may be a reason why it's not widely accepted by mainstream biologists. Anyway, I will continue following Rupert Sheldrake. I always find him very articulate, very, very intelligent, very clear in his arguments. I actually took part in one of his experiments years ago as a guinea pig. I can't remember what that involved, but I had an opportunity then to meet him on a sort of one-to-one basis, which was a good opportunity to reflect on this topic. Anyway, just offering this as a point of view that you might want to ponder, not as a definitive part of the jigsaw, as it were, in trying to explain this curious thing called trans.